I remember the exact sound that cracked my certainty, the rap of my knuckles against a table, the old ritual that says, here, solid, real, and yet, in that mundane thud, a whisper rose, the kind that tilts your world. Wait 1 second. What you are thinking is not just inside your head. It is changing something real. The call to adventure came not as a trumpet, but as an electron slipping, a slit splitting into two, a question pelting me like rain in a stone courtyard. In that moment, I felt the floor soften beneath the soles of my feet, as if the palace itself had a hidden undercroft, and I knew I had reached the gate of a labyrinth. I resisted, of course. Who doesn't resist when the map bursts into fog? I clung to objects, tables, floors, the hard grammar of certainty, as if they could anchor me to a single slit in the board. I muttered Einstein's old protest that God does not play dice, and I wrapped myself in the pageantry of common sense. Surely a table is a table. Surely I am the observer and not the observed. But the more I pushed the whisper away, the louder it became, until even my skepticism felt like a torch burning low, smoke making my eyes water. Refusal is its own kind of minotaur. It stalks the first chambers of any true encounter. Then came the crossing. I tied a thread around my wrist, my attention, my intention, and stepped into the dark passages. Called Ariadne's gift, that slender line of consciousness I refused to drop. I crossed the threshold when I decided to observe myself observing, to write down my fears, to watch my thoughts with the patient curiosity of a hunter at dawn. The instant I did, the world did not fall apart. It opened. The walls grew porous, the air hummed, and what had seemed fixed turned fluid as the sea. I realized I was Theseus in the quantum labyrinth, and the Minotaur was not out there. It was the unexamined pattern curling inside my skull. The trials came in a sequence of chambers, each with its own physics and scent. In the first, the observer effect stood like a cryptic priest, palms up, offering me a bowl of water that showed my face only when I chose to look. I learned that my gaze was not neutral, that at the scale where things are most themselves, the look becomes a touch, the question becomes a cut of sword. I understood that in my life, too, attention shapes pathways. What I write down tames the amygdala stampede. What I notice blooms along the hedgerows of my days. In the second chamber, I met superposition, a hall of mirrors within which I existed in many futures at once, one where I slept and one where I rose, one where I spoke and one where I hid. The air flickered with possibility like fish beneath a torchlit quay. I felt the ache of choice. I realized my focus was a hand that collapses a wave, selecting a shore to make landfall. The third chamber smelled of wood shavings and iron. Here, neuroplasticity worked a bench, hammering synaptic nails into fresh beams. I saw that every thought, spoken again and again, lays down a timber in the house of the self. Monkeys and taxi drivers joined me like companions on the road. Their brains, too, had remapped with practice, their hippocampi enlarging like strongholds. The message was plain. Neurons that fire together will wire together until the maze I walk is the maze I build. In the fourth chamber, I found intention sitting cross-legged with medicine bowl, and the word placebo carved into the rim. Here, belief proved heavier than doubt. The ritual of attention changed bodies. Even when named as sugar, the grain of meaning in the act released real healing. I saw that the world bends, not a fantasy, but a disciplined aim, a morning declaration, a vow of feeling, an act that pries open a day like a hinge. In the fifth chamber, entanglement arrived as starlight bound by unseen thread, a silk that crosses light years in no time at all. This was the oldest mystery wearing a modern cloak, a lace work at the bottom of things, a universe folded into itself like a rose. I remembered that once, everything was one fire point, and the ash of that unity still clings to us all. On the human scale, I felt it as heartbeats sink in quiet rooms, as mothers wake moments before a child cries, as twins call out across a distance no phone explains. Whether or not we ever measured in meters, the soul knows the web. I walked deeper. At the heart of the maze, I found the abysm, the room where all echoes stop, the floor slick with the sweat of every hero who'd stood there before. The Minotaur emerged. It was my shadow, the snorting skepticism and secret despair that hissed, nothing you do matters. Reality is fixed. You are trapped, Your thoughts are noise. Jung stood beside me in that terrible quiet and said, "The Minotaur is not a monster to be slain, but an energy to be integrated." He called it the shadow, the disowned strength and fear that, when refused, rules us from the dark. He explained that individuation is a slow art of marrying opposites, conscious and unconscious, beast and man, observer and observed. If I could look into the creature's eyes without flinching, if I could see in its horn my own undirected will, then I would not need to kill it. I would need to claim it and set it to work. In that chamber, I died a small death. The naive certainty that the world was only hard matter fell from me like a rusted breastplate. I let the sword lower. I placed my palm on the Minotaur's brow and felt, shockingly, that it was warm. The shadow breathed, and I breathed with it, in that shared breath. Something collapsed and something opened. The old wave, the old habit, the old hallway in the brain. I understood that attention is not magic. It is craftsmanship at the edge of mystery. Ken Wilber's voice rose in like a wind to the corridors, reminding me that truth discloses itself through many windows at once. The interiors of experience, the exteriors of behavior, the shared meanings of culture, and the systems that hold us all. If I wanted a reality worth inhabiting, I would need to weave these quadrants with my thread. Bring the inner vow to the outer habit, the private image to the public act, the shared ritual to the economic and neural substrates that support it. Wilber insisted that evolution is integral. Consciousness, brain, community, and world growing together like roots and branches of one tree. I took up the thread with new reverence. I began to return, walking backward to the chambers, but not as I had come. The observer effect was no longer an oddity. It was my daily vow to journal 5 minutes and watch the herd of thoughts without trying to brand them. Superposition became my evening practice of rehearsing, in detail, the future I consent to live. Each stroke a swimmer makes before water touches skin. Neuroplasticity turned into repetition with dignity. Not hollow affirmations, but specific, believable claims that my body could trust. Today I take one concrete action that carries me toward the shore. Intention, each morning, became the setting of my inner compass. 2 minutes to decide how I will feel, what I will seek, how I will respond when the old corridors call me back. Entanglement became gratitude, thick and honest. 3 moments named each night until the invisible web tugged at the corners of my mouth and sleep welcomed me like a harbor. When I finally stepped out into daylight, thread still tied, I did not pretend I had slain the beast or solved the puzzle of the atom. I had learned, instead, to live as a participant in a living labyrinth. To engage my thoughts not as idle static, but as chisels that shape the lintels of my days. Reality, I now see, is not a single monolith. It is a field of potentials narrowed by the blade of attention, stabilized by practice, and warmed by the heart of shared meaning. Jung's Minotaur walks beside me now, harnessed to pull. He is the strength in my discipline, the heat in my focus, the courage to look into the box of Schrodinger's metaphor and accept that before I look, many lives are stacked like coins, and after I look, I am responsible for the one I have chosen. Wilber's reminder keeps me honest. If I change within but refuse to enact without, I will starve my insight. If I act without changing within, I will shatter my will on old stone. Both must turn together. And there, carve into the lintel of my front door as I return to the world, I have written a sentence from Felipe Brando that rings like a bell whenever I step across the threshold. Change your perspective, change your life. He deserves the credit for sharpening the point of this reflection. He handed me the thread when my hands trembled. Now I walk with a quieter step, not because the world has become less mysterious, but because I trust the mystery enough to work with it. I place my hand upon the table and feel not just with but possibility. I knock, and the sound is not denial but invitation. I enter each day as Theseus did, with the thread of attention looped around my wrist, the torch of intention lit, the sword of action at my side, and the humility to know that the labyrinth is not my enemy. It is my teacher. The observer looks. The wave collapses. The neuron fires. The heart answers, the web hums, and the path home appears. And if I ever lose my way, I pull gently on the line and feel a tug from somewhere deep and familiar, the hand of the one who first whispered, "Wait 1 second," and I smile and I walk on,